Right, we've tried to give you the latest updates and the perspective from science. I think for most beekeepers, what they want to know is what are the practical solutions, what can we actually do in our apiaries, in our associations, or in our businesses. So a little bit about me so that you know where I'm coming from. I'm a small-scale commercial beekeeper from South West Wales. I've been on a journey from conventional beekeeping to sustainable ecological beekeeping. The question that I asked myself, and I did ask myself right from the beginning, was, can beekeepers do things better? Yes, they can. And that means if you're a beekeeper in this audience, either here in the hall or elsewhere, this applies to you. Yes, you can do things differently. Technology is giving me difficulties. Here we are, all right. Change is needed. I think you can work out from what we've said, all the speakers have said this morning, that we really need change. If we're going to preserve, protect, enhance the native European dark bee, change is needed. And this can be difficult, I think, especially for commercial beekeepers. We haven't mentioned commercial beekeepers yet today. I'm one, albeit on a small scale, but there are commercial beekeepers that are on quite a large scale, and this is a business. It's not a hobby. They have to pay their daily expenses, their loans, their household expenses from their business, and so change can be difficult for them. I'm a former trustee of BIBBA, and we've mentioned BIBBA today. I'm secretary of the B4 project. And I'm secretary and one of the founding directors of a new CIC called Sustainable Honeybees. And this is an organisation formed of commercial beekeepers who are looking to provide solutions, not just for commercial beekeepers, but for all beekeepers. So how can we change as beekeepers? Well, breeding and rearing of locally genetically adapted honeybees. I think that's the key. It's about local bees. Sales of genetically adapted honeybees. Right at the beginning, we were saying that one of the problems is that beekeepers, amateur beekeepers, they want to get hold of bees, particularly when they've done their beginner's course. Where do I get bees from? I know when I did my beginner's course, no one actually told me where I could get bees from. So a local beekeeping association organised a bee sale. You've probably been to those where bees and equipment are available. So I bought some bees. Hadn't got a clue what they were, where they'd come from, what the genetics were. I didn't understand any of that because the local beekeeping association hadn't really taught us about any of this stuff on our beginner's course. So we obviously need to talk to beekeeping associations to improve their basic beginners courses. We need sustainable beekeeping management practices. We can't really carry on with what we're doing. We're using lots of miticides, and as Grace said, is that really necessary? We're using lots of sugar and fondant. I'm sure you're all aware, if you're on bee base, you get a little message from the National Bee Unit in July or something saying your bees are going to starve. And I'm thinking to myself, what? Are you serious? And this is a big problem. We actually need to support commercial beekeepers to develop alternative sustainable business models. Lots of commercial beekeepers are locked into an industrialized model of how they run their operations, and it's a little bit like farmers. You can't say to a farmer who's farming conventionally, right, well, go and do something different, do organic or regenerative agriculture, because they can't do one thing one week and then switch to something else the next week. There has to be a transitional plan, a transitional system where they get from where they are now to where they need to be. And we need to do the same for commercial beekeepers, and no one at the moment is doing that. So not surprisingly, commercial beekeepers are just ignoring this agenda completely. Some of them, talking to them, they know that they should be changing, but they don't know how to do that. No one's giving them the tools to make that transition. And we need that scientific research, which is what this symposium's been around about. Both in amateur beekeeping and commercial beekeeping, people get stuck in a particular way of thinking, into a paradigm, and they've got to shift. And one of the things that can help us to get people to shift is for them to understand the science. I say to, when I go around the country doing presentations, I say what we need are thinking beekeepers. And I'm not saying you're not thinking and that you're not capable of thinking, but you need to start and rethink the way you're doing your beekeeping. And you have to start with the bees, and you have to work at how you look after them and what the whole purpose of beekeeping is. We all need to really think these things through. We need change because it's beekeepers that need to change. You know, Nicola Bradbeer from Bees for Development once said to me, and she's quite right, actually the bees don't need beekeepers. We all think they do, but they don't. They can survive perfectly adequately and look after themselves. And we've got people in the UK now doing a lot of work with free living colonies in trees. And they will tell you that these bees are quite capable of sorting things out for themselves. Thank you very much. And beekeepers have caused many of the problems. We've got to be honest about that. You know, we started in the UK, so the history tells us, importing bees through Exeter, and that was in the 1850s. And we've kept on importing bees for all kinds of reasons. And as we saw earlier in some of the graphs, it's unbelievable. The number of queens we're importing, not so much now package bees. Look at that graph, zooming off the top. And why? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? I think beekeepers started some of these problems. I mean, we're not responsible necessarily for the degradation of the environment and the forage and the rest of it, but we are responsible for the way we keep bees. So we started causing some of the problems. We've got to start finding the solutions. And that's a responsibility for all of us. We do have dedicated organisations in the UK. B4 Project is one of them. BIBBA, we've got our new Sustainable Honeybees CIC, and then in Scotland and Ireland, we've got dedicated native honeybee societies. But we actually need a lot more to happen. We need local beekeeping associations to get on board with this. When I go around the country, some are very sympathetic and want to do it and are trying to move towards a better system. Others just really haven't even thought about it. It goes back to being a thinking beekeeper. So we all have responsibility. Commercial beekeepers have a huge responsibility. They manage thousands of hives around the UK. Change needs to happen there as well. One thing that we can do is look at a sustainable bee improvement programme. And to me, bee improvement isn't sort of genetic manipulation and thinking that we as human beings can somehow improve the honeybee. This is about a sustainable improvement, which in effect is putting right the damage that's occurred. Because you can see, hopefully from this morning, that there's a huge amount of genetic damage that we have caused by importations and the way we've managed bees. We need to stop that, but we also need to put things right. And we can do that through a sustainable bee improvement programme. We can also look at this through free living colonies. We actually need to spend a bit of time, well, a lot of time really, looking at what's happening in the wild. How do bees actually live? How do bees manage themselves? And what can we learn from that so that our beekeeping management practices work with the bees, not against the bees? So we want a system that's appropriate and available for all beekeepers, one that maintains genetic diversity, so that the bees breed true, with a system that produces hardy, locally adapted bees, and a system that reduces demand for imports and the associated risks that we've been talking about this morning. So we'll start by working with local bee populations and refine it through a process of both natural selection and some beekeeper selection. Obviously, we're looking for bees that are suited to the natural environment. We're looking for a local ecotype, which has been covered this morning. Artificial selection. Jacques Van Alphen, in his latest book, makes the point that we need to have a different approach to free-living bees and to bees that amateurs keep as against commercial beekeeping. We actually need to look very carefully at commercial beekeeping and what type of bees we want and the sort of bees that we can produce based on local adaptation and an AMM phenotype. And there's only one route for us all as beekeepers, and that is we do not use imported stock or the offspring of recently. Right, other important issues. We need to understand that genetic choices result in different systems of beekeeping. If you have a buckfast bee, then inevitably you're going to have to feed it in August because you're going to have to read those MBU emails and take notice of them. You're going to have to use miticides. If you're a commercial beekeeper, you're going to be requeening regularly, probably every year. And that's the system of beekeeping. That's quite often that's really reached into the way we deal with amateur beekeeping, and why are we doing that? If you run an AMM or neonative bee, then you'll have a different system. You'll be able to manage the bees more in line with what bees really want you to do, and you won't be going down the route of artificial feeding, and you'll also be able to go down the route of not treating for varroa, although that there is a way that you need to do that. We absolutely need to move to a bee-centred approach of beekeeping. I don't think we can impose our will on the bees. It doesn't work for us, and it certainly doesn't work for them. And we need to consider the options for bringing about an end to imports. We're very much at the mercy of government policy. And I don't think that banning bee imports is necessarily top of people's agendas in the world of politics for all kinds of reasons. But we have to push. So the B4 project, and I know some of you here have submitted evidence to the Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs Committee, who've been looking at import controls into the UK. Some of the controls we have are virtually non-existent. So if we're going to stop pests and diseases and therefore genetic damage, we really need to look carefully and push hard for the government, the UK government, to impose sensible and verifiable import controls. But bear in mind that banning imports is a necessary but not a sufficient step towards a better future for honeybees and beekeepers, because you'll find some commercial beekeepers that will have brought in carniolan bees, for example, and then we'll breed them in the UK. So if we're breeding bees in the UK from subspecies that are in conflict with our own native bee, then we're going to have the same problems as if we're importing. So we shouldn't think that importing is the only solution to this problem and that then we'll have a wonderful world to live in, because we won't. We've got much more to do. Right, so that's me. I think overall, beekeepers, we've got to step up and we've got to start to do more to tackle the problems, not just from imports, but from poor beekeeping management practices. Right, thank you very much. We'll just